So welcome back everybody. Thank you to the new subscribers, thanks for the comments as always. Hope it's been enjoyable. Something different this is completely. What you're looking at is a pair of speakers that were designed and built by a gentleman called Les Wolstenholme, who is the owner director of Avondale Audio, which you've heard on my channel, and those that are in the know all about him. In effect, he's a one-man band, handmade products for the hi-fi industry, and has been doing so for the 30 years that I've known him. And I do have a preference for his equipment. That will become obvious later. But these are the very rarely seen, the Revelation ones, manufactured under a company name called RMS by Avondale Audio, and it's a very clever little device. I have spoken to the designer at length about why and where and how they work. It's not just a simple matter of there's a box on the top here, a chamber and a stand. There is in fact some ports on the back down here. See these slots? They're ports. There's also slots inside this chamber, and there's a carbon tube that runs right the way down from the stand, from the center of the stand up to here. This in effect doesn't actually touch that stand, apart from the tube inside a tube, this piece here. It's also on a suspension system. There's you can see it wobbling, and to get the very best out of these you have to adjust the feet, the spikes and the carpet, so that there is no uneven weight on the spikes. Now he hasn't told me that, I have found that out myself. So the thing is balanced on these spikes, and the actual suspension system underneath is something to behold, and we'll go in and cover that. So I'm talking to him, I said, what about this suspension? I've turned this thing upside down, as you can see. I said, what about the suspension system here, which in fact there are a few companies now in effect utilising this type of suspension system as a stand for a speaker. In effect, it's he tells me it's a bear with me, it's a type of diaphragm clutch arrangement. I can't quite understand how or why, but it allows, you see the fixing here for the carbon rod, there's one single carbon rod that goes from here right the way down through to the top of the actual enclosure or cabinet, if you like. The whole thing is carbon fibre and steel. It does not sound anything like a box speaker you've ever heard before. It's an astonishing thing, and the bass weight is phenomenal. And I did quiz him on these slots, and there's slots in here as well, in this chamber, slots in this tube, and inside there's a carbon rod. It must be over 1 inch in diameter, I don't think you can see it. It goes from top to bottom. But in effect, that this lot here doesn't attach to this. Quite clever. Consequently, there is no resonance at all. There's no, I don't know how to explain it. I don't like box speakers at all now. For those that follow my channel, I do open baffles, and there's no box, and you can clearly hear a box. I can clearly hear a box, and they are, to me, they're a distraction. And it's now evident that quite a few manufacturers are going down the road of specialist open baffles, albeit at a huge cost, by the by. But the beauty of these is, of course, there's very little frontal baffle area. There's no sharp edges anywhere, so you don't get any, in effect, baffle diffraction. And they measure superbly, which is what I'll go on to next. That's the crossover. You can run them passively or actively, and I think the base unit is a monocore SPH135C, and the tweeter is a focal, so focal T120T titanium. It's a titanium diaphragm. So high quality components used throughout, and the engineering, he doesn't make these anymore, they are unobtainable. There's only 30 pairs ever made, I believe. There was a better version, or an upgraded version, where you had 2 base units and 1 tweeter in an MTM configuration, so the chamber was much longer. The chamber was much longer, so you had a bass, treble, bass, and I had a pair of those, and I had to sell them, but that's another story. They were superb, and a friend of mine, Craig Hill, we had them hooked up to a 6-pack system. I'm going back 25 years ago, and he said he was a he owned Onyx, owned Onyx Audio. He had a hi-fi shop for 30 years, blah blah blah, and he said they were the best speakers he ever heard, run actively off a 6-pack system. I can't remember the crossover I was using. I think it was a John White crossover, but just something different. You're not going to see this every day. So I just wanted to show you this, how these Avondale RMS Revelation 1s measure. What you're looking at is a sweep. I've smoothed it to a 1/3. There we go. 75 dB, almost flat out the box. So there's 80, 75, 80, so it's 10 dB, excuse me. So there's a little bit here and there. So I played about, messed about, and I could actually get it to 75 and a 75, so that's 5 dB increment, so it's within, near as damn it, 1 dB right the way from, look at this, from 30 Hertz through to past 20k. And these some others I was playing around with, but I left it at this. I think this was done actively, not passively, but that's about the best response I've ever seen. And the crossover point is 3.8k, so around about here. You can see that, where it starts to just dive off a bit. But I'm sure if I tweaked it, I could actually pull this flat. But they sound so sweet, so nice, I'm not going to bother. First speaker I've ever measured out of many speakers that from the get-go do wonderful things. As an example, bit of bullshit really, but because the proof is in the pudding, in the eating. And he did say to me, Les Wolstenholme, the gentleman who designed them, he said it was all guesswork at the time. It was just guesswork. He'd build a pair, play around. He thought about how do you design a speaker, why do they design a speaker in a box. He spoke to somebody that knew all about it, and why do we put a box around a drive unit? Well, it's to hold the air, actually, he said, get that air to work for us. So Les looked upon it from a different angle, different slant with this design, with these RMS Rev 1s and the 2s, and came up by chance, he will openly admit, by chance, and many hours burning the midnight oil, came up with a very good speaker design, but unfortunately it wasn't to be, and most people that have them won't let go of them. I lost a pair, but I've now got a pair back, so I'm very pleased. So thanks for looking. Hope it's of some interest to you. They aren't going back there. 75 dB, 80 dB at round about. They are not particularly efficient. You do need a pretty powerful amp to drive them to get the very best out of them. But when you do, they do shine. There's something else. So if you ever see a pair, buy them. Thanks for now. Bye.
I'm just playing a load of old shit.